The year was 1867, and the land lay raw as a wound that never healed. Storms had swept the mesas for 3 straight days, leaving canyons clogged with mud and the rivers swollen like veins fit to burst. A rider moved slow through the mess, a lone figure against a wide, merciless country. His hat brim dripped steady, his horse's hooves squelched in the clay, and the weight of silence pressed harder than any saddle. He'd been riding since dawn with nothing but wind for company, his ribs aching from hunger and his throat as dry as a burned creek bed. Then he saw it, a wisp of smoke curling up where no smoke ought to be, thin gray, defiant against a clean sky. He reined in, narrow eyes fixing on that smoke as his horse snorted, uneasy. There was an old line shack out that way. He remembered it from years back, before he quit caring much about anything but survival. It was half rotten, good for little more than shelter against the rain. Now it had smoke bleeding from its chimney. The West had taught him long ago. Smoke meant trouble more often than it meant safety. Could be outlaws, could be scouts from some raiding band, could be desperate drifters eager to cut a man for his horse. He slid his Winchester from the saddle scabbard, worked the lever with a sharp metallic click, and rode closer at an angle that kept the sun at his back. The shack looked just as he remembered. Leaning walls, broken shutters, roof sagging like tired shoulders. Yet life pulsed inside it. He smelled beans. He heard the faintest scrape of tin against tin. He dismounted slow, boots sinking in mud, and stepped to the warped door. The rifle muzzle nudged it would open. What he saw stopped him cold. A woman, dark hair braided, skin the color of sunburned clay, eyes sharp enough to cut, froze where she knelt by the hearth. Her hand clutched a knife. Across her lap lay a boy no older than 8, his cheeks hollow with hunger. Beside them, a smaller girl clung to her skirts, eyes wide, lips trembling. The woman rose in one smooth, feral motion, the knife flashing. She said nothing, but her glare carried 1,000 warnings. The cowboy's rifle lowered an inch. His throat worked around dry words. "I ain't here to harm you," he muttered. "Just saw smoke." The knife stayed steady. The children clung tighter. He stepped inside, careful, like one might approach a spooked horse. The warmth of fire licked against his rain-chilled skin. He saw the pot on the fire, watery beans, hardly enough to feed one, let alone 3. The woman's voice came then, low and edged. "Leave." His jaw flexed. He thought of turning. He thought of riding out into nothing, letting them starve or fend as they might. It wasn't his business. It never had been. But something in the sight, the hollow cheeks of those children, the fierce way she stood between them and the world, caught in his chest like a burr. He set the rifle against the doorframe, reached into his saddlebag, tossed down a bundle of dried meat. Then, voice rasping like gravel, "All 3 of you, come in. Eat. Rest." For a breath, silence held. The fire cracked. The children stared at the food like wild pups. The woman's eyes softened, not with trust, but with calculation. Finally, she stooped, tore a strip of meat, and set it in the boy's hand. He bit down like he hadn't tasted food in weeks. The cowboy sank onto a broken chair. Rainwater dripped from his hat brim onto the dirt floor. His words came softer now. "World's cruel out here. Crueler still when you're alone. If you want, we share fire tonight." The woman studied him, blade still tight in her grip, but she did not say no. The shack smelled of bean smoke and damp wood. Shadows danced across the walls, broken by firelight and the crack of kindling. The cowboy chewed slow, letting the food settle after too many days of near-nothing. Across from him, the woman spooned beans carefully into the children's mouths, eating nothing herself. "You got a name?" he asked finally. She didn't look at him. Her voice was flat. "Names bring death." He smirked faintly. "Then call me no one." He paused, watching her. "But most do call me Clay." Her eyes flickered up at that, measuring him. The boy leaned against her, drifting into sleep. The girl whispered in a tongue Clay didn't know, Apache no doubt, and the woman hushed her gently. Clay cleared his throat. "Them yours." The knife flashed again, though she didn't raise it. "They belong to no one. Their mother died. I keep them." Clay nodded slow, understanding settling heavy. Orphans. The frontier bled orphans like the earth bled dust. He looked into the fire, seeing ghosts of his own, faces long buried, a wife's scream swallowed by gunfire, a child's cry silenced too soon. He said nothing of it. The fire said enough. Hours dragged. Outside, the wind howled like wolves. Inside, mistrust hung thick. Yet necessity pressed him closer. She allowed him the far corner of the shack, the rifle always near his reach. The children curled tight beside her. And in the pauses between wind gusts, he caught fragments of her story. Soldiers had come through her camp months ago, burned it, took what they wanted, left her alive. Whether by mercy or mistake, she didn't know. She found these children days later, hiding in a collapsed cellar, their mother torn by raiders, their father long gone. She carried them since, feeding them with whatever her hands could scrape from the land. Clay listened. His hand tightened on the brim of his hat. He wanted to ask why she hadn't abandoned them, why she bore such burden alone. But he already knew the answer. Some promises were heavier than iron chains, and she had likely given hers to the dying mother. The fire burned low. The woman's gaze never left him. At last, she said, "Why help us?" His voice was gravel, raw. A man gets tired of watching folks die. That was the truth of it. Nothing more, nothing less. The first warning came as a faint crunch of hooves on wet ground. Clay's head snapped up. His hand went to the Winchester by the door. The woman stiffened, clutching the children closer. Outside, voices drifted low and mean. 3, maybe 4 riders. Clay slid to the window, peered through the crack. Moonlight caught glints of steel, pistols, rifles, hungry eyes. Outlaws by the look, sniffing for scraps. One voice carried, "Light inside. Bet there's food. Maybe more." Clay's jaw tightened. He moved silent, loading shells into the Winchester. He turned to the woman. "Keep them quiet." Her grip on the children tightened. Her blade flashed, not at him, but as promise. If the riders came through, she'd spill blood first. The door rattled. A fist pounded. "Open up, friend." Clay stood just out of sight, rifle raised. Silence stretched. Then the door creaked as the outlaw shoved it. The wood groaned. Clay fired. The blast thundered through the shack, with splintering, smoke filling the air. A man screamed outside, falling hard. The others shouted, curses spilling into the night. Gunfire cracked back. Bullets punched through the walls, showering splinters. The children shrieked, muffled quickly by the woman's hand. Clay rolled to the side, fired again through the gap. Another cry, another body hitting mud. The outlaws cursed, firing blind. Horses screamed, then silence, save for retreating hooves pounding into the distance. Clay crouched, breath harsh, rifle barrel smoking. His eyes swept the room. The woman crouched against the hearth. Children clutched to her chest. Her gaze met his, fierce, unyielding. Minutes crawled. Finally, Clay lowered the Winchester. He stepped outside, boots sinking into fresh blood and mud. 2 bodies sprawled by the door, faces twisted in final shock. The third had fled. The night smelled of cordite, blood, and rain. He came back in, shut the door, and set the bar across it. Silence held, broken only by the crackle of fire. His voice came low, rough. "World's against you. Might be easier if you ride with me." The woman said nothing, but her eyes, dark guarded, held something new. Not trust, not yet, but not refusal either. The boy stirred half asleep, his small voice whispering. The girl's hand gripped her guardian's braid. The firelight painted them all in copper and shadow. Clay leaned back against the door, rifle across his lap. He looked at the 3 of them, strangers, yet no longer. He exhaled slow. "The frontier's wide," he muttered, half to himself. "But some nights it forces strangers to become family." The wind howled on. The fire snapped. And in the silence after violence, something fragile began to take root. Morning came pale and brittle. The skies stretched wide with a thin wash of gold. Clay saddled his horse in silence, every motion practiced. Steady. The Apache woman stood with her knife tucked at her waist. the children clinging to her skirts, eyes still red from the night's terror. Clay looked at them, at the weak food stores in the shack, at the blood stains drying the mud outside. "This place won't hold," he said simply. "Too many ways for death to find you. You ride with me." The woman didn't answer right away. Her gaze swept the open land beyond the shack, her jaw hard as stone. She wasn't one to trust easily. Every line of her face said as much. But the orphans needed more than scraps and fear. She nodded once, curt. They mounted. Clay pulled the boy in front of him. The girl rode with the woman. They set out west, toward a patch of land Clay once called his own, a ranch that had near fallen to ruin, but still stood as walls against the endless horizon. The land unfurled rough and merciless before them. Mesquite stretched low, ravens circled overhead, and the sun pressed heavy on their backs. The children dozed against the steady sway of horses, but Clay's eyes never left the distance. The west wasn't empty. It breathed enemies, outlaws, soldiers, raiders, storms. The silence between him and the woman gnawed. He felt her watching him when she thought he didn't notice, measuring his every move. Finally, he said, "You'll have to trust me if we're to make it." Her answer came sharp, without hesitation. "Trust is for fools. I walk with you because I must." Clay didn't argue. He understood better than most that trust was a brittle thing, bought in blood and fire, not words. By midday, the sun burned high, and they reached the swollen banks of a river. Brown water raged fast, frothing over boulders swollen from the storm. Clay cursed low. "No way around. We cross here." The boy whimpered at the sight of it. The woman's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Clay dismounted, testing the depth with his rifle, but the current nearly yanked it free. He clicked his tongue. "Stay close. Don't fight the pull." They went in slow. Water surged against the horses' chests, icy cold, threatening to drag them under. The boy clutched Clay's coat, face buried. The girl screamed as the water slapped high. For a moment the horse beneath Clay faltered, legs sliding on hidden rocks. Clay held the reins tight, muscles straining. Then the boy slipped. His small hands tore free, his body yanked by the current. Clay's heart jolted. He dropped reins, lunged from the saddle, and grabbed the boy's shirt just as the river tried to swallow him whole. The horse fought beneath, water smashing against them both. Clay dragged the boy up, choking, clinging to him against the saddle. The Apache woman's voice pierced the roar. "Hold him!" Clay's teeth ground as he fought the current, muscles burning, dragging horse and child both toward the far bank. Step by step they clawed free. Mud sucked at boots, water hammered his lungs. But at last, with a heave, they stumbled onto dry ground. The boy coughed, sputtering. The girl wept. Clay slumped, chest heaving, his arms still tight around the child. The woman knelt, hands trembling as she touched the boy's face, then looked at Clay. For the first time, her eyes softened. "You saved him," she whispered. Clay spit river water, his voice ragged. "No child drowns on my watch." For a moment, silence bound them, stronger than any chain. Then the boy buried his face against Clay's chest, clinging tight as if he'd never let go. They made camp that evening in a shallow canyon. Fire built low beneath the rocks. The children huddled close, wrapped in old blankets. Clay cleaned his rifle, movement steady, the rhythm of a man who lived by steel and powder. The woman crouched opposite, roasting the last of the rabbit she'd snared earlier. Her eyes lingered on Clay's hands, on the quiet competence of every action. "You have fought before," she said flatly. Clay didn't look up. "Fighting's all the frontier ever taught me." She studied him long, then turned back to fire. The children ate greedily, meat dripping down their chins. For the first time, laughter broke soft from the girl, a sound fragile as glass. But the night carried more than laughter. Clay's horse snorted uneasy, ears pricked. He froze, hand tightening on the rifle. The woman sensed it too. Her knife slid free in silence. The canyon breathed danger. Then came the low growl, rolling out of the darkness. Eyes glinted between the rocks. Amber, hungry. A mountain lion, ribs sharp with hunger, prowled near, muscles coiled. The children gasped. The boy clutched Clay's sleeve. "Stay still," Clay whispered. He lifted the Winchester, sighted the beast. The firelight cast long shadows, smoke curling. The lion crouched, tail lashing. Clay fired. The shot echoed, smoke choking the air. The lion staggered but did not fall. It lunged. The children screamed. Before Clay could reload, the Apache woman stepped forward, her bow drawn taut, arrow whistling true. It struck deep in the lion's throat. The beast crashed down, claws gouging earth, then lay still. Silence followed, heavy as stone. The woman lowered the bow, chest rising fast, eyes blazing. Clay exhaled, lowering the Winchester. He gave a slow nod. "You shoot clean." She wiped blood from the arrow tip. Gaze fierce. "I protect mine." The children clung to her skirts, trembling. Clay looked at them, at their wide, terrified eyes, and felt the ache of his own ghosts. He remembered a child's cry once silenced too soon. He forced it down. That night, sleep came in fits. The children nestled between Clay and the woman, finding safety in their bodies. The fire crackled low, sparks climbing into the star-swept sky. Clay lay awake, rifle across his chest, staring at the stars. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of others beside him, not as burdens, but as fragile, breathing proof that maybe the world wasn't all death. Dawn broke, painted crimson on the horizon. They packed quickly, following dry gullies to mask their trail. But the land was wide and eyes were many. By midday, Clay spotted dust plumes in the distance, riders. His jaw tightened. Soldiers. The Apache woman's shoulders stiffened when she saw them, her grip crushing the girl's small hand. "They will kill me," she whispered, bitter certainty in her tone. Clay scanned the horizon. "Not if we keep moving." They spurred the horses hard, weaving through arroyos, dodging cactus and scrub. The children clung, eyes wide with terror. Dust rose behind. Closer now, shouts carrying on the wind. Clay's heart pounded. He knew soldiers didn't forgive. An Apache woman with children and a white man, they'd brand them raiders, fugitives, worse. Gunshots cracked from behind. Bullets whined past, throwing dirt. Clay drove his horse harder, shouting, "Hold on!" They tore through the wild, wind whipping hair and hat, sun scorching down. The soldiers pressed closer. Clay veered into a rocky pass, narrow as a coffin. Hooves thundered, sparks flying from stone. A bullet clipped the rock near his head, shards stinging his cheek. He grit his teeth, pushing deeper. The canyon tightened, walls rising sheer. Ahead, the path split, one fork wide and open, the other twisting into shadows. Clay made his choice quick. He drove them into the shadowed path, praying it wouldn't dead end. Behind, soldiers shouted. The echo magnified, bouncing like thunder. Then silence. Clay pulled rein, listening. Only the wind whispered. He waited, breath sharp. Minutes dragged. The soldiers had lost their trail in the split. Relief rolled through him, but it came with a weight. The woman met his eyes, dark and unblinking. "You risked your life." He swallowed hard. "So, did you back there with the lion?" Her lips pressed in, but the faintest flicker of something, respect, maybe, passed across her face. That night they camped under stars cold and sharp as steel. The boy curled beside Clay, head heavy against his arm. The girl hummed a tune in her mother tongue, soft, soothing. Clay stared into the flames, listening. He felt the land pressing close, the danger circling still. Yet for the first time in years, he wasn't just a man running from ghosts. He was someone's shield. The fire snapped. He whispered to himself, "The plains break men, but maybe they build families too." Dawn came pale and cold, the kind of morning that carried more silence than peace. Smoke trailed faintly against the horizon, curling black fingers into the sky. Caleb knew what that meant, trouble, and too close for comfort. He stood in the yard, one hand resting on the stock of his Winchester, the other gripping his hat against the wind. Beside him, the Apache woman, Ayanna, clutched the two orphans close, her eyes searching the smoke as if she could already see the death it carried. "They've found us," she said, her voice low but steady. Caleb nodded. "Reckon they have. No sense waiting for them to ride up our doorstep. We take the fight to them, or none of us live to see tomorrow." The children's wide, fearful eyes darted between the two adults, but Caleb crouched, placing a hand gently on each small shoulder. "Listen here. You stay close to Ayanna. You don't wander. And if I tell you to run, you run and don't look back." The boy swallowed hard. "But you'll come with us, won't you?" Caleb forced a smile, though his chest ached at the weight of it. "I'll be right behind you." With that, he saddled his horse, every movement clipped and urgent. Ayanna mounted her pony, and together they rode out, the children wrapped tight in a blanket, clinging to her waist. The trail was rough, cutting through scrubland and dried gulches, the air sharp with the tang of distant fire. As they crested a ridge, Caleb's eyes narrowed. Below, in the valley, a cluster of men, bandits, outlaws by the look of their mismatched gear, had set up camp. Horses were tethered in a circle, rifles glinted against the light, and crates of stolen goods lay cracked open. It wasn't just an enemy camp, it was a warning. The men had numbers, at least 20 strong, maybe more, and every one of them looked hungry for blood. Caleb felt the weight of his own rifle in his hand. Outnumbered, outgunned, but not beaten. Not yet. "They'll ride at sundown," Ayanna said, eyes narrowing as she studied the men. "That is their way. The darkness hides their cruelty." Caleb spat into the dust. "Then we best cut their legs out before they get moving." He slid from the saddle, belly to the ground, crawling through sagebrush. Every step closer brought the stink of sweat, whiskey, and burning wood. His heart hammered, but his hand stayed steady. He lined up his rifle, breathed deep, then fired. The first shot cracked like thunder. One outlaw dropped instantly, chaos exploding in the camp. Men scrambled for cover, shouting, firing wild shots into the hills. Caleb fired again, and another fell. He could almost hear the bandits' fear over the gunfire. This wasn't an ambush they expected. But numbers began to turn the tide. Bullets whipped past, shattering rocks. One tore through Caleb's sleeve, grazing skin. He grit his teeth, rolled, and fired back, keeping them pinned. Then, from the ridge behind him, came Ayanna's war cry. She charged down, weaving through the dust and gunfire, her pony sure-footed on the slope. She loosed arrows in quick succession, each finding its mark, her braid snapping like a whip behind her. The children, hidden higher up, watched with wide eyes as the two adults cut chaos through the outlaw camp. Caleb's Winchester cracked steady rhythm. Ayanna's arrows struck swift and silent. For a moment, it felt as if they could win. 2 against 20 and still standing tall. But then came the roar. A man on a black stallion burst from the smoke, broad-shouldered, scarred down his cheek. The leader, his shotgun blasted, spraying dirt too close to Caleb's head. "You think you can gut my men, cowboy?" the leader snarled, his voice carrying over the din. "I'll cut you open slow." Caleb rose to one knee, sighted down the barrel, but the man wheeled his stallion sharp, dodging the shot. Ayanna fired an arrow, only for it to glance off the outlaw's shoulder armor. He laughed, the sound cold and cruel. "Fall back!" Caleb shouted, grabbing Ayanna's arm. "We can't take him here." Together, they scrambled up the ridge, covering one another as bullets whined past. The leader cursed, rallying his men. "Ride him down!" The ground shook with hooves as the outlaws gave chase. Caleb fired blind shots over his shoulder. The children's screams cutting sharp through the chaos. Dust swallowed them, fear pressing heavy in every heartbeat. And still, Caleb kept pushing forward. He couldn't let go. Not now. They reached the canyon by nightfall, the last light bleeding red across the stone walls. Caleb knew the place well. It was a dead end, a trap if handled wrong. But it was also their only chance. The canyon narrowed ahead, walls sheer and unscalable, a perfect choke point. "We hold them here," Caleb said, voice hoarse but firm. Ayanna glanced at the children, then back at him. "Then we fight until we cannot stand." The children huddled close to the canyon wall, clutching one another, their eyes shimmering with trust Caleb wasn't sure he deserved. He checked his rifle, counting the last of his cartridges. Too few. He strapped his knife tight, jaw set. The first outlaws appeared as shadows against the starlit sky, their torches flaring. The leader rode at the front, shotgun raised. His men whooped and hollered, certain of their victory. Caleb fired the opening shot, dropping the first rider. The echo of the rifle thundered off the canyon walls. Ayana's arrows followed, swift and merciless. Horses screamed, men cursed, and the canyon became a killing ground. The outlaws surged, but the narrow pass forced them into a bottleneck. Caleb fired, reloaded, fired again, each shot placed with deadly precision. Ayana moved like a ghost, her arrows striking true even as gunfire sparked off the rocks around her. Still, numbers pressed hard. A bullet slammed into Caleb's side, ripping fire through his ribs. He staggered, breath choking, but he held the line. "Not yet," he growled through clenched teeth. Ayana's cry split the air as an outlaw closed in too close. She dropped her bow, drew her knife, and met him head-on. Steel flashed, blood sprayed. She stood panting, fierce and unyielding, as the man crumpled at her feet. The leader dismounted, striding forward, his shadow long and jagged in the firelight. "You can't win, cowboy. Give me the woman and the brats, and I'll let you die quick." Caleb wiped blood from his mouth, lifted his rifle one last time. "Ain't yours to take." The leader raised his shotgun, but Caleb was faster. The Winchester cracked, the slug slamming dead center into the man's chest. The outlaw staggered, eyes wide, before collapsing into the dust. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the remaining outlaws faltered. Leaderless, bleeding, they broke, fleeing into the night, leaving their dead behind. Caleb sagged against a rock, breath ragged, blood soaking his shirt. Ayana was at his side in an instant, tearing cloth to staunch the wound. "You fought like 10 men, she whispered, her voice trembling though her hands were steady. He managed a faint smile. "And you like 20. The children crawled close, clutching his arm, tears streaking their dirt-stained cheeks. Caleb looked at them, these small, fragile lives, and felt something he hadn't in years. Belonging, purpose. The stars wheeled overhead, cold and bright. The canyon floor was littered with bodies. The smell of gunpowder and blood thickened the air. Yet, in the midst of death, there was life, a chance, and maybe, just maybe, a future. Long after, the tale would be told of the cowboy, the Apache woman, and the 2 orphans who faced an army and lived. But for Caleb, it was simpler than legend. It was the moment he chose not to die alone. And that choice changed everything.